Good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, guys. Good morning. Oh, much better. Thank you. Everyone's awake for the lessons of today. Okay, so thanks for joining us. Thank you for those online as well. So today we're gonna have our lecture by our friend Chi, and he's gonna talk about jealousy and selfishness. The things that we all know, right? Like we don't have it, we don't need to be here. So let's just support him, okay? But before we do, our friend Davi is gonna do the initial reading, and Mari is gonna do the prayer for us.
The opportunities for moral improvement that life allows us should be taken advantage of wisely and immediately. The march of time is inevitable, and an occasion neglected is lost forever. Time and wind never come back. Thus, it is a liberating blessing to utilize every opportunity for inner growth. Stay alert in order to take the most advantage of the hours of your earthly existence.
So let's close our eyes. Let's breathe in, breathe out. And let's thank for the opportunity of being here, of listening to the words from Tiago. And let's learn a little bit more about Jesus' teachings. And let's ask for all the spirits to guide Tiago through his lecture and to guide us through this week. So be it.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Understanding that nobody wants to be here, I will do my best. But I can tell you one thing, I think I need to, and I will explain why, and probably by the end of this lecture, nobody has the fear to say that maybe being here was not that of a bad thing, okay? Let's think like that. So, let's talk about those two traits of human personality. Why am I saying that right from the beginning? It's not a psychology class. No, we're here to talk about spiritism. But while I was studying, something came to me. And always I have those, insights. And one of the insights is, how do we understand those concepts today? Even comparing with the way that in the end of the 1800s, those traits were considered or understood. And what is important for us, let's always remember that Spiritism evolves with the advancement of humans and our understanding of ourselves. That's why I decided to draw a little bit from some of what I do. Some of you don't know, I just happen to be a psychotherapist. I don't analyze anybody, okay? I get paid. I don't do those things for free, right? So then I'm not analyzing anybody. I don't get anything for that. But the reality is, it is important that we understand how we see those traits. And I'm calling very much like traits for a very specific reason. They are part of everybody. When we look at the traits that we have, that we are somehow born with, we need to understand why are we born with them. For instance, many people don't like feeling angry. And in many ways, we learn that anger is, a kind of a negative feeling. But if we are born with the ability to feel anger, there is a reason for that. So if we all, in certain level, experience those feelings, of selfishness, of jealousy, of possessiveness, of fears. They are there to communicate something to us. So instead of simply looking at how can I root this out of me, let's understand a little bit where this comes from, why this is important, what is this communicating to us, and then how we can grow from that. And where can we go from those traits to other traits that potentially are, let's say, the natural evolution of those traits. So let's go and look at the origins of what selfishness and jealousy are. And for this, it's very interesting. Psychologists in the 1900s started looking at behaviors of people and other species of animals. And they started realizing that the young animals or the babies have a very interesting instinctive attachment to the primary caregivers. So that is almost a kind of an instinctive need to keep those objects or those figures very, very close. But again, they're babies. That jealousy, that self-centeredness is something that usually what we consider negative. I want to possess my mother. They started realizing that no. They started realizing that when we are very vulnerable, that need to attach to those objects or people that help us and feed us and keep us warm, it is a mechanism of survival. It is a mechanism of self-preservation. We are born with the ability to attach. That's what the psychologists would call bonding. We all biologically create bonds. It is about survival. It is about that primitive appreciation for those who are nurturing us. But imagine, we're talking about a baby. We're talking about when very young us. And very young us didn't see much. We were not yet developed to see the entire world. Imagine somebody brings a baby here. Are they going to look around and say, oh, how many people there are at the least side today? No. They are going to be focused and fixated on the very immediate environment that they have, which probably is that person who is holding them. And that person usually is responsible for feeding them, keeping them warm, keeping them clean, keeping them safe. And those aspects will start giving the memory to that little baby that this person or this figure or this thing that is carrying me keeps me safe. So I need to keep this close in order to survive and in order to thrive and in order to grow. So let's try to look at the prototype or the biological function of jealousy and selfishness. Where does this come from? Remember, we are still looking at us as humans being born today. In the second part, we're going to expand a little bit for us as immortal beings. But right now, it is important for us to understand that we are being born right now in this existence with the ability to be jealous and selfish. However, we don't call that for a baby, right? Nobody wants to say, what a selfish baby. Who does say that? God. What do we say? This baby is very attached. When we see young kids that have a difficulty to share, they want it. It's my ball. It is my doll. It is my toy. It is my mommy. My dad. It is my bed. Somebody comes for the bill. No, you're going to sleep somewhere. That's my bed. Why that? When we are young, we develop those attachments based on the quality of the relationship that we establish with those early figures. So if we receive a very positive kind of care, we are going to develop a positive bonding or a positive attachment. When we have those caregivers or there's caregiving objects for the kid that are not constantly there, not stable, we also start developing a sort of an inconsistent pattern of bonding or attachment. What about those figures that more than help hurt? Do we want to be close to what hurts? No. So instinctively, the child avoids. So anybody that had or has kids, how many times, right? We see the interactions of kids. Some of the kids don't want to play with anybody. Some of the kids are very clingy to the teacher, clingy to some friends, because we are seeing the expression of those patterns of relationship that were developed very early. Jealousy is basically an over attachment. It's some sort of over attachment that some children develop. And many times we carry this for life. What about selfishness? Right? Well, we know in Spiritism, let's be very clear that, Spiritism is very, very clear. There are specifically two traits that are very negative for the development of the spirit, right? It is the jealousy, or the selfishness and envy, right? We talk a lot about that. And today we understand that the jealousy, it's a kind of a lighter level of envy, because the envy is very destructive. I want to destroy what I don't have. Jealousy is like I want to keep what I have, or I want to take what I don't have to me. We're going to understand a little bit why in a minute. But selfishness. Remember when I mentioned here that the baby or the young child doesn't see anything but those specific figures. Actually, we as babies may even think that those objects that are nurturing us are simply an extension of us. That's very interesting. It takes a little bit to recognize that others are others. Don't we have this thing about a person leaves and the child or cries or simply doesn't remember them? What exists is me. And because this child has needs, everybody's tending to their needs. Therefore, for a very long time, and I'm talking about a few years is a long time, the child thinks what? I need, I get. I need, I get. I need, I get. But then what happens is when we start growing up, we start developing the ability to understand that I am part of a world. I am not the center of this universe that I know, that for a while was very, very small and slowly starts growing. We start having the perception, the world starts getting bigger. But what is the consequence? One of the consequences of that? If this world is getting bigger, chances are I'm not going to get my needs met all the time. Suddenly, what has been met immediately, it is not. I need to wait. And then suddenly I need to start recognizing that some others have needs as well. So then I need to get in line, especially when, if you think about kids, when a sibling comes, oh my gosh. Many are laughing because you know that. Not because you were that sibling, like because probably you witnessed it with other families, right? So what happens? The jealousy. I want this. I don't like this baby. I started regressing. I started having, behaviors that are even for children that are younger than me, so then I can get that again. We are all born with this. And for the very first years of our lives, those traits are meant to keep us alive. Not only that, if we expanded that for the primary caregivers, they also respond to this. There is a connection there. Early mothers will some way develop that as well, to start paying attention and distinguish the kinds of needs to attend to these kinds of needs. I'm talking about caregivers in general because primarily we know the mothers. In other cultures, you have an entire group of people that do that same, have the same role. For families that have two fathers or even one father, they will need to develop that as well. So as humans, we are all born with the ability to create bond, to attach, either to receive the attention or to give it. Make sense so far? Okay, you're all PhDs in psychology now. Wonderful. Right? We call this the foundation of human relationships. That is the very foundation of human relationships. Now, of course, that as spiritists, number one, we are free thinkers. We're not bound by dogmas. We evolve with times. We help the world to evolve. Therefore, today we understand that among many contributing factors of many origins of those traits that become negative to us, past experiences is there somewhere. But also we have genetic factors that can play a role on that. We have behaviors that are learned. Children learn by their models, their examples. So if they experience people acting like that and having benefits, like younger kids that have, or older kids that are very jealous, there is a tendency right in the beginning to follow that. It can be broken. This pattern can be broken, but in the beginning, that is a learning behavior. There is some specific traumas, especially young children, when they go through very traumatic experiences, very difficult experiences, they develop a kind of a primordial fear and insecurity that leads them to become sometimes very clingy. We have upbringing, children that don't receive much care, that in some point are there to take care of themselves at very early age, or children who are overly protected, that are treated as little kings and queens, as we say. Nothing wrong, I'm not judging, that is the reality. We have different ways to treat people. And also we have past experiences. If we look at ourselves as not only product of this life, but agents of evolution, we are the agents of our evolution. And when we look at past experiences, we may be thinking about our past experiences as children with our parents, but we may also think about experiences that we have had in many other experiences, being children for many and many, many existences, being parents for many, many, many existences, having positive and negative patterns of attachment and bonding developed with us for many, many, many existences. So then you can imagine that this could be potentially even more powerful and stronger than simply learning in one existence. Imagine if I am, dealing with this trait of being jealous for 10 different existences. Or that self-centeredness or selfishness. It comes from self. It is all about myself for several existences as well. And sometimes being reinforced by the culture, by the family, by the world that we live, by, we influence others as well and take the benefit of it. So look at how many factors that contribute for us to develop those traits and many times to keep them. So when we look today and we start slowly, when we talk about psychology, I like to bring this word, not because of the profession, but because of what is psychology. Psyche is soul. It is the intangible. It is that part of us that are beyond our physical bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, our instincts, our tendencies, our memories. So, jealousy happens as a more negative trait now, like we arrived here, jealousy. Right away, it is a product of a fear of losing what one day you consider that was very important, or it was desired, or in some point it was even essential. But many times this will happen because of a lack of needs that are met. So let's make sure that from the very beginning, let's call it, who is the real father of Spiritism? It is Jesus. Spiritism is the Christian message decoded to its essence. Jesus already said, judge not to be judged. So when we look at jealousy, there is actually a psychiatrist from Vancouver. His name is Gabor Mate. And he says something interesting that really helped me to look at life and other people in a very different lens. He says, we need to look at everything with curiosity and compassion. He said, let the judge not. Let's look at life. Let's look at people with curiosity and compassion. So let's look at jealousy with curiosity and compassion right now. Let's do that exercise. A person that wants so much is because they feel that they don't have it. A person who develops an excessive need to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be the center, chances are that some of those experiences was, I am in the margin. I am invisible. When we look at people, I can say when I, receive a person in my own office to talk about this, and they're having enormous problems in relationship, in marriages that are crumbling, with problems parenting others, right? With the difficulty at work, with the difficulty understand the needs of others. What we see is something more often than not, something called unmet needs. Unmet needs. But because also in Spiritism, we learn that we are not necessarily victims of circumstance. One thing that is important for us, and that is one of the, most, complex gifts that life gives us, which is pain. An unmet need brings pain. But one thing that happens with pain is that we cannot give back. That's a very good reason why we say it doesn't work. The tooth for a tooth, the eye for an eye, the hand for a hand. Because if you lose your hand and you take the other person's hand, there is two less hands. It is not one hand being transferred to the other. It is two less hands. If it is a tooth for a tooth, pretty soon there will be a need for a denture. There is not going to be one tooth given to another to have a tooth. You don't heal your pain by give pain to anybody. You don't heal your pain for blaming others for your pain. You don't heal your pain by expecting that the person that caused you pain to heal your pain. They are probably very expert in causing pain, not in healing. We're asking the wrong people to heal our pain. Whose pain is that? It's mine now. Life in the form of somebody, in the form of a relationship, in the form of a frustration, in the form of a disappointment in life, in the form of a loss, gave me one of the most difficult presents to accept in life, that is pain. When I have an unmet need, I experience pain, emptiness. They need to fulfill that. But unfortunately, most of us, or many of us, still trying to compensate or to deal with that pain, fulfilling ourselves with what is not to be used to fulfill anybody. We try, but many times we're not successful. Because most of the time we rely on sources that are very, very volatile to fulfill us. Now, when I talk about jealousy, probably if I came here and I had a poll with everybody, I am like without the fear of losing. When I talk about jealousy, probably you're all going to say jealousy has to do with people, has to do with the need to possess the other, the fear that I have of losing another person. Because of that, I start controlling them. And that's when we come to those cases that we see the crime happening. Limiting other person's life, not letting them be themselves, trying to mold them in the way that I want them to be, so that I feel more safe, right? Don't use those clothes. Don't connect with those friends. Don't look for this in the social media. Don't. Why? Because of my own fear. In terms of relationship, I'm afraid that I'm going to be what? Replaced, abandoned, alone. It is fear. And if I am afraid of being alone, it's because I know what loneliness is, and it's bad. So it is important that we look at those traits with curiosity and compassion. Because then, instead of, and we can joke, and of course we joke and it's fine. I don't have it. Because it is not an easy thing to look. Look inwards. We're looking inwards to discover that we have unmet needs. It hurts. It hurts. Oh, the noise is my son right there. Sorry about that. At the end of the day, most people who have those traits and who many times become very controlling, and who experience terrible things, but unfortunately do terrible things with others. It is people who really don't like themselves. They don't have that what we call the self-esteem. I would say even more, they don't have something that is called self-worth. They don't feel their worth. So I need to control what is around me. I need to control my environment. I need to control the people around me, because I cannot control this within myself. It is interesting because when we move slowly to Spiritism, we will start looking at those traits not only from the point of view of humans that we are today, but for humans in evolution for several existences. And that is a very interesting book, and I recommend with caution that you read this book. That is called Evolution in Two Worlds, of the series of André Luiz books that were psychographed by Francisco Cândido Xavier. It's, in my personal opinion, one of the most complicated books, because it talks a lot about the progression that we have, from the early species, when we were primitive beings incarnating in primitive species until we evolve as humans as we are today. So it's a very complex, dense book. But it says something interesting there. And it can enlighten us on that matter of those negative traits and our need for evolution on that. We pass those traits to ourselves, existence by existence. Did you ever think to realize that maybe you are your own third or fourth or fifth generation? Right? Like that's what some say. Actually, our process of evolution, it is like an upward spiral. And many times we're going to occupy different roles within our own clan, our own tribe, our own families, our own group of people that we develop those affinities, or we have tasks to evolve together and evolve the relationships that we created generations back. And we have the chance to go back to them and perfect them. Right? So imagine that even in the genetic predispositions that we have, chances are we are still evolving together. We are helping our own genetics to evolve because we are back in this chain of relationships. So when we talk about traits that also are hereditary, we're talking about how we're going to pick up in the future where we left. That's why we say there are no leaps in evolution. Because I am actually, picking up where I left, together with the other figures in our families that are doing the same. And we are helping each other in this process of evolution. So when we look about jealousy, when we look about selfishness, when we look about patterns of bonding and relationship, we are actually constantly creating, recreating, developing, mending, healing those patterns of relationship within ourselves, existence over existence. Like many things that we experience, attachment, relationships, bonding, is the work of the millennia. It is not the work of one single existence. It's the work of the millennia. That's why when we talk about mental health, when we talk about relationship, we are talking about something extremely complex. That actually we are still very young to understand the dimensions that are, built in those relationships. We're less than 200 years understanding our own psyche. We're more than 3,000 years understanding our physical body since Hippocrates, and more than 3,000 years. For 200 years that we're starting to crack our heads open to try to understand what is inside. It is complex. We are talking about something that we call spiritual maturity. We are maturing. We are evolving together. We are expanding and developing our ability to be conscious, aware about ourselves, not only about ourselves today, about our real essential nature. That is the awareness of us as immortal beings that are evolving for a very long time and will continue evolving incessantly. One of the greatest lessons that we may have about that in the Bible, it is the story of the two sons. And then you can ask me, what two sons in the Bible? What are you talking about? Oh yeah, that's right. Many of us know that as the prodigal son. Actually, if you remember, there was the father, there was the son, which we call the prodigal son, and he was like the protagonist of the story, right? All the spotlight was on him. Do you remember there was someone else there? The other son. Raquel. She did that. Raquel.
That's why I study other things.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm here too. I'm jealous and selfish. Two sons. A son goes to his father and says, give me all that I have, all my inheritance, give me everything. I'm out of here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to work for you. I want to go. Give me. The father says, okay, that's yours. All yours. He goes. We all know. He goes through all experiences that he desired to have, all the earthly connections that he could have, all the passions were fulfilled for him, the earthly passions, the earthly desires, all the luxurious life that he could live, that earth could give. And then he finds himself empty. But remember the key to understand, he was not poor materially. All of that didn't enrich him spiritually. All those earthly pleasures gave a very immediate satisfaction, but didn't fulfill his soul. Tired, regretful, guilty, humbled by those experiences and seeing himself at the end with nothing, he regrets and he comes back to his father. When he's coming back, even one of the workers on the big property, right, runs to the father, your son is back, your son is back. And then the father says, he was dead. I thought he was dead. And now he came back to life. Now let's celebrate that he is back to life. And then in the story, they, butcher the animals, make a big feast, you were dead, and now you're alive, and he comes asking for forgiveness, and completely, and like, I am ready to receive all the punishment that you want to give me. And then the father says, no, come back to me. I love you. And then that's the second part. After that beautiful reencounter, the older son comes and immediately tells the father, what is this? Why are you doing this to me? Why? This ingratitude that he had, he didn't care. He didn't help you. He didn't do anything. I was here the whole time.
Not fair.
Not fair. Exactly, not fair. Right? And the passage, and I brought it here, in Luke writes very well about that. But in response, he answered his father, like the older son. I have served you all these years, have never disobeyed one of your orders, yet you have never given me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. There was zero acknowledgement of somebody there that was suffering, that was his brother, that probably grew up with. Of course, at the end, this father looks and says, I didn't need to give you. Had always everything. You have always had everything. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. This would be a lecture on its own to talk about those relationships. But the reality is, we are looking at, first of all, some level of selfishness from that first son that says, give me what is mine, and I don't want to help you. I don't want to be here working for you. Let me take off. And he goes. And we look at the immaturity of this person, thinking that this kind of life and this kind of, use of the resources that were, acquired over hard work would be simply wasted. That is true. This person didn't do something good. But now we see a very subtle side on the other side of the spectrum of that false righteousness, of the feeling of entitlement that is also very characteristic of those who are selfish and jealous. Let's remember, if I am completely obsessed with having control, chances are it's because I don't feel that I have it. I'm constantly chasing control. If I am constantly with this feeling of possession, possessiveness, extreme attachment to somebody, am I feeling secure about myself? No, I'm afraid that this person is going to go. I'm afraid to lose. So usually every time that we see this desperate need for something, it's because I'm feeling that I don't have it and I can lose at any time. And I'm relying on that to feel better about myself. So this shows the complexity and at the same time, the kind of attitude that is important for us to have and to look at those issues that pertain to ourselves and to look at those traits within ourselves and ask ourselves, where am I with them? Am I insecure? And because of that, I'm always hesitant to express myself in front of others? Am I insecure and I avoid constantly people, things, experiences, say no because I'm always afraid of what other people are going to think about me? Or I am insecure and I start establishing an artificial and excessive control over people and things around me constantly. So then I artificially feel better about myself because I am forcing the presence of other people or things around me at any cost, which also reflects the same insecurities and fears. Now, there is a crucial difference between those two brothers. Crucial difference. One of them was able to tap into this emptiness, experience the pain of feeling completely destitute of everything, feeling weak, feeling lonely, asking for help, returning to where they came to say, didn't work, I need help. A person who needs help is what? I would say that this person is practicing some level of humbleness. I need help. I cannot do this on my own. I am not self-sufficient. This is not easy for us to do. It demands an emotional fortitude. It demands us to know ourselves, our limitations, accept that I am not self-sufficient. I cannot do this on my own. I need others. I need help. I need support. And that's why we understand today when one of the first teachings of Jesus, right from the beginning, here we are talking about the chapter 4 of Matthew. It is right after Jesus is actually presented by John the Baptist, baptized by him, goes to the desert, is tempted by the demons, all the story, which again, it is all symbolic, folks. Let's understand that. And then he starts what they call preaching. He goes, he walks, and he starts re-encountering his disciples. Hey, we committed to that, remember? Come. And then he says, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That is one of his first lessons. Jesus is giving us the first step, which is there in the book Heaven and Hell of Allan Kardec, the first step of a series of steps for us to repair and to heal our mistakes. First is to repent, is to really admit from the bottom of our heart. Then we know that the second is called expiation, which is going through all these difficult feelings of that acceptance, that kind of a sinking in, let's call that. And then the third one is called reparation. And here we have the evolution, the reparation that many times will happen 3-4 generations ahead when we come back and start restoring what we have done that probably was not necessarily the best. Today, if we look at those two pictures here, I brought them for a very simple reason. Remember, we are talking about how we can see even spiritism today, right? I heard something that was very, very concerning. There, a research that happened even in Brazil, and many of you here are Brazilian, but even if you're not, we know that Brazil is a huge, huge adepts of spiritism are there, right? Like very, very strong. But spiritism is losing those who are connected with it. And many are saying, especially the younger ones, doesn't seem relevant. It's a very interesting statement, because if we learn that actually spiritism is actually, also just starting to help us understand, that is a lot that has been written in 150 years that still are being discovered that, is true. But the fact is, how are we looking at life and also evolving together with this that was brought to us to help us to live today? Can spiritism help us today? Of course. Because when we talk about inner transformation, and you go to the internet, when we talk about that, go to the internet and search for that. Thousands and thousands and thousands of lectures about inner transformation. Well, today, if we look at what is this inner transformation, that's what we are talking today in modern life, in the social disciplines, in psychology, right? In wellness, and many who work in that kind of wellness field, and health field, they talk about that. Because we say self-care is something that involves many dimensions. We're talking about our physical body, we're talking about our emotions, we're talking about our thoughts, we're talking about our relationships, we're talking about our finances, we're talking about our relationship with the law, we're talking about our relationship with society in general, with the, and the relationship with our inner self, with our immortal self. Inner transformation is part of what today we call self-care. Obviously. Tiago, why are you saying that? Because we are not to be fatalistic, looking at ourselves and say, how can I then look at these traits that I have? You told me, Tiago, that I cannot root them out of me. So what is that? I'm just going to leave it grow like dandelion? No. Like everything, if we understand that one day those traits of jealousy and self-centeredness were important for us all, even for our survival, it is important for us to understand when we transform those traits, what are they going to be? So we can understand how I'm going to help those traits to be what I need them to be today. That's what in Spiritism we say, how are we going to, let's say, harness and change our primitive tendencies? So then when we read even the Spiritism, the same way that today we read the Bible and we extract the meaning and the spirit of the letter, when we are looking at Spiritism and even the messages that were given to us, how can we take the spirit from those letters? Because the work of interpreting, of assimilating, is ours. Don't think that because a message came from a spirit that is elevated, he is actually chewing the food for us. We just need to swallow. Or we are not taking any of it intravenous, my friends. We need to understand, comprehend, apply in our lives. When we talk about inner transformation, we are talking about the work of the millennia. When we're talking about self-care, it is the work of the millennia. What can I do? When we look at a child that doesn't know how to share, we teach them how to share. Are they going to like it? No. In a few months from now, if we're lucky, sometimes a year or so, are they going to start sharing? And then one day they get together and then we look at, oh my gosh, how beautiful. They are sharing. But we are there hard at work, practicing. It goes right, it goes wrong. And then the toy breaks before the child says, if I am not the owner of this toy, nobody is. And then one day, Sarah brings a friend, take it, and then pick somebody else. Hey, you want to come play with me? That's where we are. We are here learning how to extend our hands to each other, how to share. Am I reading by myself at home? Oh my gosh, I'm not going to be selfish anymore. No, we have the responsibility to collectively talk and discuss and reflect and share and learn and practice. A lot of self-reflection. A lot of self-reflection. I may be wrong. I may be wrong. I hope I'm not. But in the Spirit's book, there is one very specific question that Allan Kardec makes to the spirits. I don't remember if it is 919. Please don't quote me right now. I can try to find to tell you exactly the question. I say, how can I then promote that inner transformation? How can I do to really practice evolving? And the answer comes very, actually, almost like a manual. Why don't you make a journal? And every day you wake up and you think about the things that you are doing, what you're planning to do. At the end of the day, you stop and you reflect of what you did today. Are those things that I did make me feel good, made me feel bad, did good for myself, did good for others? Self-reflection. That's part of the know thyself. It's like this is thousands and thousands of years old, and it's there for us. Know yourself. Know if you are jealous today. Understand the roots of your jealousy. Am I afraid to lose because I've been destitute? That has been so much scarcity in my life. What can I do today so then I don't feel lacking so much? Do I need to get help? Do I need to then, put this in practice myself? Do I need to stop blaming my parents for what they didn't give me? What do I need to do? Prayer. One of the greatest issues that we have as spirits, it's the greatest blessing and the greatest issue. We are constantly connected, not only with each other, but with the spiritual world. Therefore, when we have those traits, there is a chance that spirits will also take advantage and feed those traits. Especially if through our jealousy, they want to hurt our partners. Through our selfishness, they want to destitute others around us of what is needed, because then they are going to feed this thought that we have in the traits, that I want everything to myself. So we will accumulate and I will actually starve of resources, not only food, but starve of resources, others around me. And then I will be the enemy of everybody. But many spirits will use those traits and try to exploit that. That's why we talk about the prayer. When we pray, we would then connect with the sources of spiritual light. We connect with our mentors, spiritual protectors, with the sources of clarity, consciousness, and we receive the insights that will allow us to do this work and restore our path of growth, spiritual growth and evolution. Practice altruism is the opposite of this selfishness. Because more and more we are selfish, chances are in some point we're going to start feeling the weight of that trait when it doesn't serve anymore. The evolution of that, it is the altruism, to do for others and to start realizing that our spirits are nurtured not by accumulating, but by sharing. Remember, in the parable of the talents, for those who have, more you will be given. For those who don't have, even the few that you have is going to be taken. That's what is being talked about. And when we talk about growth, evolution, inner transformation, self-care, please, in the same way, and when we see somebody that experiences and has those traits, and we need to look at them with curiosity and compassion, it is important that we also look at ourselves with curiosity and compassion. Right? That's what the world says today on the jargons that we hear in the self-help books, self-compassion. What is this? Just dead already. Right? Efforts to overcome the evil inclinations. Remember that evil here, that word we already constantly say. Evil here, it means our imperfections. Translations, because, originally, that was the way that they would say, Allan Kardec in French would say the evil, the negative, the bad, right? Not evil as an entity. So we were talking about our imperfections. We're talking about what? The unfinished businesses that we have. Right? It is the selflessness that is sick, that is selfish. Right? It is the altruism, it is the sharing ability that we don't have yet, but we are working. We are a work in progress. And finally, all of that is summed, as Jesus did many times. All of that is summed in one of the most powerful, beautiful, and touching statements, which was a mandate that Jesus gave in his last supper with his apostles. One of the last lessons that Jesus gave to the apostles was, now I give you a new commandment. That's why he says, I will give you a new commandment, that you love one another. As I have loved you, you must love one another. Because undeniably Jesus was, and it is still, and it will be for a very long time for us, the best example of selflessness, of altruism, of that giving spirit, of coming to a point that Jesus was so well nurtured by the love of God, in extreme connection with God, that he gave everything else, including his physical life, to help us to grow and to evolve and to love. So looking at ourselves and others with curiosity and compassion, practicing the love, the forgiveness, the altruism, the detachment from the excessive earthly needs that we have, understanding that the needs that we have need to be put in perspective, because we need, not only as people, but we need as spirits. But as much as we need, we also have already what to give. When we feel that we need, give. When we feel that we don't have, practice sharing that. And we will be surprised that we have even more than we thought that we had. Because we are growing, we are evolving, we are improving. And understanding those traits will also help us to understand who we are to be and who we are becoming as immortal spirits in evolution. Thank you very much. I'm supposed to be here.
If there is questions.
Are there questions?
We're not getting two people asking that.
That's true. So, any question, folks? I hope that I made myself somehow understood. I hope that this gives everybody the chance to, do a very positive examination of, ourselves and find opportunities to grow. Yes, a question.
How can we distinguish self-preservation to selfishness in a relationship?
That's a very good question. And I think the best way it is to understand the impact of an action based on one of those traits. It's like self-preservation doesn't have to do with taking anything away from anybody, but it has to do with self-protection. Self-preservation is self-protection. So if I'm feeling hurt by somebody, or if I'm feeling that I am, being taken advantage or something like that, or if I'm feeling insecure, and in that moment I believe that I need to retract myself for self-protection, I need to step back from a relationship that I see that potentially is harmful to me, but I am not hurting others in the process. It is self-preservation. But selfishness usually will have to do with taking something away in my benefit. But in this process, I'm not seeing who is around me. I'm only seeing myself. I'm blind for what around exists. A person who is working in self-preservation still has the ability to see that others also need to be preserved, also need protection. So I'm not protecting myself at expense of somebody else. But usually when I'm acting with selfishness, I am doing that at any cost. That is the greatest difference. At any cost. The other doesn't exist in the moment. I am the only one. Self-preservation many times helps others. Selfishness doesn't. It helps you. All right.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Chi, for the beautiful lecture. A lot for us to think about it and practice because, we did not learn those lessons yet. We just pretend we did. So thank you for everyone who joined us online. Now we're going to get ready for the passes.